Today on Media Moolah, the podcast where we dive into the future of media with a focus on monetization and growth, we'll be discussing ad sales. And I'm thrilled to welcome Dan Barry. Hello, Dan. How are you doing today?
Hello, mate. Doing good. Always a pleasure to chat about ad sales.
I'm very excited as well about this topic. So, Dan, I got introduced to you and your business through my last episode with Niklas from Megahit, that you know. And we were talking about all the ways newsletters operators can find new sponsorship opportunities. And of course, we discussed a very important aspect of monetization for media and publishers, which is selling their ad inventory to potential advertisers. It sounds obvious and it sounds simple, but it's not, especially for small to medium-sized publishers. For reason we'll be discussing today, actually, this can be a real challenge. So the goal of this discussion today is to give some keys and recommendations for publishers listening to us on how to optimize their advertising sales. But before we dive into this topic, who is Dan?
Who is Dan? I am Dan. I run Ad Sales as a Service. We help media businesses, mainly newsletters, but media businesses of all shapes and sizes sell more direct ads sponsorships. My background, many moons ago, I was training to be a lawyer. I found it rather boring and asked people a few years ahead of me, and it also still sounded rather boring. So decided to move into sales, joined a fintech called Finimize, which was doing media sales in a few different ways. Newsletters one of them. Was there for a few years for Finimize to an exit to Aberdeen, big asset manager in the UK, and then went to the Daily Upside, which was a newsletter, very much newsletter first, startup as the first sales hire, which was fun. And the last year and a half have been running Ad Sales as a Service at the agency, which has been a lot of fun, and that takes us today.
So why did you start this business? Because you mentioned that you worked for a newsletter as a sales guy. Did you see an issue, I guess, something that you can improve, that you could address?
Yeah, I think I saw a problem people were experiencing and a big growth in newsletters specifically, which was like put your A-level business hat on, like a good opportunity. So the Daily Upside, when I was there, had about 1 million subscribers, a well-known, fast-growing newsletter. I think today they own a few other different types of newsletters as well. I knew I wanted to start my own business for a few different reasons, but kept on getting people reaching out to me. This was kind of like just after Beehive had launched, kept getting people reach out to me saying, hi, I've got 10, 30, 50, 100k subscribers. Everything's going great, but how do I sell ads? Because obviously my job title was Daily Upside, so clearly the director of partnerships. And it's happened like at least once a week for a few months. So always happy to try and jump on a call and help people or point them in the right direction or like stop them going in the wrong direction at least. And yeah, with the, I hate to use the word democratization because it's overused, but democratization of making a newsletter by Substack, Beehive, ConvertKit, etc. That just became more and more and more, and it was clear that a lot of people were trying to emulate the morning brew model. The typical content or marketing growth person that typically founded a newsletter business didn't like or didn't know how to do or didn't want to do. So we're really trying to plug that gap. And there are other good agencies and slightly different models that do what we do. So we're just approaching it from a slightly different way.
If I'm not mistaken, Substack and Beehive, the platform that you mentioned, they have a few different monetization functionalities for the creators or for the publishers. To your sense, it's not enough for a creator to monetize and to live off of their newsletters?
Yeah, Beehive definitely does. Substack is more subscription focused. So like sticking to the sponsorships or ads side, yeah, Beehive has an ad network. There are other solutions out there as well, like Paid, WellPut, Percendo. There's a bunch. I think Live Intent do some or used to do some form of newsletter solution as well. And they are good in the sense that they're easy. They're good also in the sense that they often have pretty reputable brands on there, HubSpot, Economists, etc., whoever. But the payouts compared to what you can or should get, because growing an audience, keeping an audience engaged is really hard work. The payouts, like to put it bluntly, the payouts suck. If it's CPC, then maybe you'll get a one, maybe two, maybe a little bit more, $2 CPC. The ads won't be personalized because they're beamed programmatically, and so the clicks will be okay. Maybe realistically, they probably won't be that good. And sometimes it could be on a CPM. Some people would argue is better, but the CPM is like $3, $4, sometimes $6 or $7. So the payout is going to be much lower than reaching out to advertisers or having them reach out to you and selling directly to them, creating a much better campaign, which is going to get more clicks. The ad network is not going to take 30 or sometimes 50% of the spend. So obviously they're getting paid, let's say $10 CPM. They're giving you $5 CPM. Obviously that varies from platform to platform and advertiser to advertiser. A simple comparison of, let's say, an AI newsletter, of which there are lots, could get a CPM in an ad network of, let's say, $5. Although that's, to be honest, often see 3 or 4, but let's say 5, optimistically, for a decent fit advertiser. If they've got a good quality engaged audience, they could quite easily sell $25 or $30 CPM, sometimes more, sometimes less, depending on the audience and how good at sales they are. So it's not just leaving a little bit. It's not 10, 20% that you're leaving on the table. It's like 5x plus what more you can make per ad slot, per eyeball, per reader. So to answer your question, the programmatic solutions in ESPs or out of the ESPs are good, especially for beginners or people that aren't looking to optimize their ad inventory, or their business model is just mass content and easy revenue, which is fine. But you're going to be leaving a lot of money on the table compared to doing direct sales. But the caveat is that it's not easy.
So I'm guessing you take a lot of time during your day to talk to publishers. What are the main pain points that you're addressing that keep coming back with your discussion with the publisher and with the media, with the newsletters, in terms of selling their ad inventory?
The biggest pain point, one of the biggest questions, I'm not sure exactly if I describe it. The pain point is kind of not sure whether they should really start ad sales or start doubling down on it. I'm not sure whether it makes sense if they're too small, or how long to leave it until they start really putting a lot of time and effort or hiring it for ad sales. Probably the most common situation, let's say, of a newsletter, podcast, influencer, content creator, is they are a small company, maybe a founder, maybe a handful of people. They've been generating revenue somewhere else from ad sales. Maybe it's programmatic. Maybe it's premium content, maybe it's something else. And they've done a few direct sponsorship deals, usually from ad hoc inbound, from someone in their audience or someone that just likes their content. And that's been great, but it's ad hoc, it's not predictable, it's not reliable. Maybe they've done some outbound to brands that they've seen in their competitors, but they've not really been able to figure it out. How to be a scalable, reliable revenue stream. To make it a scalable, reliable revenue stream, I guess, is one pain point, to go back to your actual question instead of just me rambling. And then the other point is, okay, we're at this stage, we get a few ad hoc deals here and there. We've had a bit of success. We think it's a good thing that we should do, but should we do it yet? Should we double down on hiring, on building out an outbound flow, hiring for ad ops? There's obviously a few different variables into what doubling down means for people, but we have 20k subscribers, we have 50k subscribers. When does it make sense for us to actually put real time and effort behind sponsorship sales?
Nice.
And interestingly, I see people wanting to get going too early much more often than I see people waiting too long, which I guess makes sense. You started this thing to make money and you want to make money, but there is some realities of how much you can charge with your audience size, whether you actually should get started now or later.
I see. And do you think that outreach is getting easier or harder for newsletters?
Outreach to advertisers and assuming that we're talking about email or social, it's definitely getting harder. It's getting harder. It's definitely getting harder for newsletter and media businesses. It's also getting harder across the board for everyone. Let's go kind of like across the board first. Deliverability for the right reasons, for the right scammy, preventative reasons has become a lot harder. It's no longer you just start firing out emails from your domain or your secondary domain and good things happen. And you easily get 6, 7, 8% reply rates. Because deliverability is a lot harder, because inboxes are a lot more flooded, it's trickier. The quality threshold to get good results has just gone up a lot, both in terms of the technical setup that you need to do, buying alternative domains and mailboxes, setting them up correctly, and then warming them up, and then making sure you're sending your emails in the correct way. And then also the more subjective-ish things like creating good cold email copy, choosing the right companies, choosing the right intent signals to reach out on the back of. So across the board, cold outreach has got harder. And for newsletters specifically, I think Morning Brew or The Hustle, or to a lesser degree, maybe Finimize as well. Back in the day, 5, 8 years ago, kind of blew everyone's minds. Oh, I can just write content in an email and then grow it and then charge money for advertisers to do their thing in it. And there was not that many newsletters. There was a lot of advertiser demand. So it was an easy sell. Now there are a lot more newsletters. There's definitely a lot more advertiser demand. For sure, the advertiser demand is there, but there's just a lot more supply. So the market dynamics has changed a lot. And you can counter that by being in a certain niche of which there is less supply. I think the most underserved and kind of extremely valuable audience that I kind of see at the moment when I'm speaking to advertisers is CTOs. Is CTOs, a plethora of well-funded SaaS products. Yes, they'll advertise in kind of like your morning brewish audiences, but what they really want and need for a big enterprise to make a decision on their solution is a CTO or a VP of engineering or those kind of like high up technical decision makers. And if I had the funding and spare time, the CTO Chronicles is what I'd start. Yeah, ramble aside, yes, it's cold outreach definitely got harder, newsletters specifically or media specifically, but it's across the board. It's a problem for everyone, but it's also an opportunity to just learn how to do it well, and it does still work.
You mentioned market dynamics. How is the ad sales market nowadays? Like, is it like for newsletter, is it like once you got a client, you can expect the same kind of deals every month, or is it really fluctuating? How is it?
I think it depends what kind of niche you're in. One of our clients or a couple of our clients are in more not old school is the wrong word, but there's one in the agriculture and agri-tech niche. And there's one in the defense and government services niche. Really high value audiences in terms of CPMs, but especially defense. It's a very handshaky industry. They're also going to have pretty good cybersecurity on their emails. So like a lot of their cold emails just won't land. But with these two specific industries, and I would say probably saying the same for legal industry or property industry to some degree, it's easier to secure longer term partners, but it's going to take longer to get there. And buying cycles are longer. They're less nimble and agile and ready to chuck 15K at something that might work or might not than a B2B SaaS or a high growth D2C company or a health and wellness startup. But I think the bulk of media are generally trying to tap into not those type of industries. And it's pretty volatile, and there's pros and cons of that. It's pretty volatile, especially there's a wealth of US-based B2B SaaS companies that have a lot of marketing budget to spend and are really happy, but like will spend it if you do a good job of reaching out to them, being passionate about your audience, listening to their goals and pitching a good campaign to them. And obviously it's much easier said than done, but it is the kind of market that you really, unless you have a social following of a million in your back pocket, you get out of it what you put into it. And if you want some form of consistency as opposed to like a 2K month and a 2K month, then need to have a really good outbound motion. Also have a good inbound motion, but like outbound is at least more predictable because you're in control. of the input or leads, or more in control of. And then how to counter the volatility, make campaigns that perform, which again, all these things are easier said than done. And that really goes down to day one, like have good content, have an audience which really likes your content. And if you have an engaged audience with great content, your campaigns will be so much better. Having a renewal rate of 50%, which is actually really good, doesn't sound good, but like most marketing campaigns fail. So like bear that in mind. Even if you're a good brand with a good strategy, most campaigns don't go well, and therefore renewal rate of 50% is pretty good. So you sign 2 new clients, 1 renews, you sign 4, 2 renew. It's long term going to put you in such a better place than having a renewal rate of 10 or 20%. It sounds obvious, but it's what I've worked for or with both media businesses on both sides of the spectrum, and having long-term partners that are happy with the results and they test at 5K or 10K or whatever it is, and then I say, right, great, let's do 50 or 60, as opposed to you're fighting for every dollar, and kind of like new business is harder to get, harder to win the repeat business if the campaign's at least gone moderately well. So I'd say, yeah, market is volatile. Best way to combat that is, which is quite nice in a way, it goes down to like good content, engaged audience, and then put effort into your campaigns. Don't just like chuck in whatever copy. Create campaigns that will perform and have a good outbound motion.
Very clear. So Dan, let's say I'm a newsletter. I have, as you said, a great audience, passionate about what I'm producing as a content. I have a good audience size. I have good topic selection, but I'm terrible at sales. So I pick up my phone, I call Dan, and I say, how can ad sales as a service help me? So you provide, I believe you provide few different models for your clients. Can you tell us a bit more about your agency? What do you do? How do you do it?
Yeah. The first thing I would ask someone is kind of like all about what they're currently doing, where they're currently at revenue-wise, audience size-wise. As we discussed, there is a reality if you have 10K subscribers, even if you're doing everything really, really well and selling out your calendar, maybe you only make 4 or 5K a month, which is that really worth a lot of time and stress? And the answer to that is obviously personal, but personal to the business or the founder. But what we do ultimately is we help newsletters sell more direct sponsorships. There's 2 core services. One is covering the first half of the sales cycle, so lead generation ultimately, but specialized for newsletter ad sales. So we would cover the mailbox and domain management for outbound, which is really, really important these days. Writing, prospecting, finding the right companies and people to reaching out to them, and then just looping in our clients with leads for them to then go and close. The second service, we're ad sales service, that's leads as a service. This is called deals as a service. Trying to name it very literally, is deals as a service. So it's ultimately the full sales cycle we hand over once a contract is signed with the details of the campaign and the campaign brief, and our clients then execute the campaign with the brand. Deals as a service, it's quite a different model to other agencies or ad brokers out there. It's been designed to be an alternative to hiring a full-time salesperson. So it's very much a dedicated service. We're building up our clients a dedicated pipeline of deals and closing them. And the pricing is like more aligned with what you would pay a full-time ad salesperson, but just cheaper, less risky, and more hands-off. I think outsourcing part of all of the sales function is a touchy topic for some people, and for some people it's just that they don't want to do it. That's fine. But a lot of people, they also really don't want to do the sales in-house. They find it yucky or frustrating, or just like, oh, I just don't want to deal with it, someone else do it. That's also fine. Like, and that's mainly the kind of people that also on the lead gen side, there's some like really established companies with large sales team that just need more, want more leads, which who doesn't? So yeah, that's what we do.
I recently had a chat with a publisher here in France. He's got a newsletter, 20K subscriber in a really good niche. Actually, it's in the cybersecurity. But his frustration with ad sales was that, okay, so they get like super small payout from ad networks, the programmatic for newsletter. Basically, you already kind of touch of that about this topic when I ask you about the monetization option through the platform like Beehive or mainly Beehive. Second thing he told me is that he's got issue with competing with the bigger player, the big B2B media, not necessarily the newsletters, but the group that have like established company for years and that are doing like, old school kind of B2B media playbook. And they have like, for one journalist, maybe they have two sales guys, they really focus on sales. So that's his frustration. So I'm hoping that you can provide some insights and expertise on how do you guys compete with the big media who already have this sales force and who can potentially take all the budget from the client, or is that not the case?
Yeah, I think that's a valid concern to some degree. I would guess that it's probably based on assumptions, unless advertiser has said like all our budget is tied up with this person, and then even in that case, like there's always next quarter. It's a valid concern, and if you're small, which obviously 20K subscribers is a great achievement, but from big picture, you're still going to be quite small, both in terms of revenue potential and like impact for the brand. Let's say it's Salesforce. If there's 10K opens and a click rate of even kind of 1%, which would be pretty good, that's 100 clicks, and maybe they get one or two conversions from that. So like the amount of time on that campaign, is it worth a conversion or two, or maybe none, or maybe three or four? But like, so there's that kind of unit economics to think about as well. It needs to be worth the marketer's time, and you can using something like the Beehive ad network whilst you're that kind of size, or like whilst you're too small, wherever that line is for people. It depends on the audience. Is a good solution. But let's say that you are big enough to make ad sales worth it for you and worth it to the marketer. Yes, there is a degree that yes, you are in competition for the same marketing dollars as a Condé Nast or Morning Brew or whoever. But it's definitely not a completely zero-sum game. A brand, assuming they're not a 3-month-old startup and still figuring out everything on the Monday for the week, they will have a marketing budget for the year or the quarter. They will have a marketing budget allocated to existing partners or platforms, Meta, the long-standing relationships with that random industry magazine that he might be talking about. And they will, or most likely will, have experimental budget allocated for things that crop up, they like to test. New ideas, so that there is literally marketing dollars set aside for this person. And yes, you are in competition. Like, yeah, so life is competition, but it's definitely not a reason not to try or a reason that you will not get it. And just use that. If you think you're in competition, you think all your partners are spending there, email all of them. Say, hey, we have like saw you advertising, and that's the best intent signal to use. Brands that are advertising in super similar audiences. Hey, saw you advertising in XYZ. How did it go? We're an audience with insert a quick description. We've worked with, or if you have any case studies yet, thought you want to explore a partnership with us too. So use that hurdle or obstacle as a strength to lean on their existing relationship to slide in the back door. But also, don't forget that there is experimental marketing budget specifically allocated for things like this.
Interesting. So can you tell us a bit more about your clients actually? Who are they? The size, the type of company, the market? Is it B2B, B2C? Perhaps you can give us some list as well, some example of the client that you work with.
Yeah. They range in terms of size and B2B versus B2C. I think B2B has a lot of, there are pros and cons of being B2C. I think there are more pros of being B2B. The biggest one is the CPMs are higher. Brands are going to pay a premium to get in front of an audience which is aligned with their buyer persona versus a consumer brand, even if the demographics align really, really well. That being said, one of our partners, B2B, but also some are in B2C, and there are some B2C niches that can command really, really good CPMs and have big ad markets, like health and wellness is a good one. Some of the AI newsletters, they're arguably B2B, but kind of B2C. Really, they're not like they're not in a defined industry or job title or function. And our clients, I think there are a range of, there's one podcast, which is a really large podcast, newsletter only businesses, kind of like 200, 150K subscribers and up. There are more traditional digital media businesses, website first, and that also have newsletters and a podcast. Interestingly, there is a venture capital business that has built a media side originally to supply deal flow for the VC business, but has now morphed into its own thing, which is more common than you'd think. There's also an amateur sports league in the US that have a bunch of really, really cool media properties. I can't name names, but like more than happy to speak about them and like experiences with them. Yeah, B2B to B2C question. If I was starting a newsletter media company tomorrow, I would have a massive bias towards it being B2B for the reasons I've mentioned, or just in a niche, and a niche which a consumer niche which you're passionate about, and B has decent, or you think can command decent CPMs. And there are some niches which are just easier to sell. In health and wellness, I mentioned that is actually we had a client in health and wellness, really nice and easy to at least like start conversations with advertisers.
So ad sales for publisher, I check my notes here, and when we prepared the podcast, we wanted to make sure that to mention that we're talking about medium-sized publishers in terms of the advice and recommendation and insight that you will share with us today. My first question, and I think you already touched a bit about this topic, is at what point or when should they start to outsource or to hire for ad sales? Because you said that previously that most of them make the mistake to hire too soon. Is that correct?
Most of them, hopefully I've corrected some of that. But I more often see people wanting to get going with us or hire too soon than waiting too long. Because again, they want revenue in the door. At what point should they hire, double down, or whether it's an agency, us, or hire an employee to double down on ad sales? Can I share my screen on this?
Yes, you can.
So I have a entire screen. Cool. So because I get this question a lot, I built out a really, really simple spreadsheet. And the way, obviously there's other factors to think about, such as money in the bank, how much you're currently doing, even though you're only doing it ad hoc and part-time. And is that going to be enough to like cover someone's salary, or do you have at least 3-6 months of this person's salary or agency fees in the bank? And that's like that assumed obvious, but putting that to the side, the best way to think about it, and to think about it in an ideally slightly overly simplistic way, is monthly revenue potential. Sticking to a newsletter example, not going into podcasts, etc. Try and figure out how much, if you're selling out, let's stick with primaries, for example, if you're selling out just your primaries, because before you start thinking about secondaries, just focus on the higher value placements. How much can you make a month if you're doing everything well? So this previous example, 60K subscribers, open rate, let's give it a 50%. 21 cents a month is a daily newsletter. And CPM of $40. Mm-hmm. So this previous example that I had in this spreadsheet, 60K subscribers, 50% open rate, 21 cents a month. That's a daily newsletter. And let's say a $40 CPM, when you've done your homework, is what you think you can reasonably charge an advertiser. That means you'll be charging, obvious maths, UK, this is all dollars, with, if you're selling out, 20K a month. Is that, with the agency or market you're hiring in, is that a good enough number? Are you going to comfortably turn a profit? Bearing in mind it could take 2, 3, 6, maybe 9 months before you're selling out your calendar, depending on how well the hire or the agency does, or you deciding to dedicate continue or double down on founder-led sales. And so, yeah, this is how I think about it. There's not a magic monthly revenue potential that I would advise people on. Generally, I'd really like it to be kind of this or up for us. around 20k plus or already doing 20k plus. And then you can start to play around with it. So, okay, when I get to 100, obviously then nearly doubles. If I am only weekly, I put 4.2 because that is technically about right, but you can put 4 a month. If I'm only sending weekly, I'm only making 8k. So, okay, if I increase my sending volume to 3 times a week, which is 13 a month, and then I hire, then actually I'm at this.
Right.
You can play around with this. Let's say European rates are 40%, obviously. Yeah, figure out how much you think you can make by doing a reasonably good job. Try and always be moderate to conservative, like conservative to moderate with your projections. And then make a judgment call. And like that, there isn't an objective answer to once you hit X number of subscribers, like you're in the clear, let's go, or X monthly revenue potential. Because if you're based in California, your costs are a lot higher if you're based in Poland or Israel. Not Israel, India, I meant to say. But,
Makes sense.
so yeah, that's how I think about it. Monthly revenue potential.
Makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. So you already mentioned that if you were to start a B2B newsletter, you'd be interested to explore the CTO kind of niche. In terms of industries for the publishers listening to us and perhaps wanting to launch new verticals or new businesses, what industries do you see right now monetizing the best? Because it's one thing to have like a passionate audience, but you can have like 100,000 subscribers in an industry or in a niche that doesn't have enough advertising potential or that monetize really with really low CPM. So what advice or in which direction do you think we can explore the industries monetizing the best right now?
Yeah, maybe just go through a few examples. The most popular for the last few years has definitely been AI. And there are pros and cons of AI. It's obviously a really well-funded industry. There's obviously a lot of really high growth, well-funded startups that want to spend and get in front of people that want to buy AI products, which aside of that, it's also the format of here's what's going on with AI, this new AI tool. It fits well with the ad narrative of it. It fits well with the content. So like the psychographics, why are they reading, is another reason why I think AI newsletters do well by nature of the keeping up with AI tools. Like an ad is helping them do that. And that's not always possible with every type of content. So that's a good thing to think about. Like psychographics, are they reading and thinking about a product or a thing that actually the ad genuinely aligns with why they're reading? Your ads are going to perform better and it's going to be easy to sell. So AI is an example, but there's just so many of them now with varying quality. So the CPMs are not what they could be. I'm going to go back to the CTO example. If I were to start one tomorrow, not that I'm as a CTO or know a line of code, I just know from speaking to advertisers that like the CTO audience is a bit of a blank check audience. Like if that's their buyer persona for Databricks or whatever, then they will kind of pay whatever you quote them to get in front of that audience. I'm assuming a bunch of assumptions within that as well. But and I don't know. There are obviously quite a lot of developer engineering newsletters, but there aren't any or many technical leader newsletters. CTO, VP of engineering, heads, but like kind of not just developer, like coding hacks and tricks. I would get really, really, really excited about as a business in general. If you're looking at the consumer side of things, the phrase like follow your passion kind of rubs me up the wrong way in certain ways, but there is truth to it. That do something that you're really interested in. A, you'll enjoy it. B, the product will be better. The content will be better. People will like when I'm watching TV or something. It could be a show on something I'm not interested in, but if the host is really passionate about it, it's a good show. Same with a newsletter, a podcast, etc. So if you are going a consumer niche, follow your passion, or do something you're interested in, but do also reach out to people that are doing similar things and just have a chat with them. Ask how much they charge for a brand deal, and if like you speak to 3 people with a decent sized audience in your niche and none of them are monetizing well at all, unless you're just doing this for fun, that should be a big red flag. I can't think of any examples right now off the top of my head, but at the same time, I think that kind of situation is really rare. The internet and the world, capitalism in general, has meant that there are appetites for all type of weird and wonderful niches. Usually an industry or a bunch of products that will pay, if not handsomely, that will pay to get in front of that audience. But yeah, just use your brain. Who are your audience? How affluent are they? What are the companies that serve or do what you're talking about? If it's like a kid audience, not kid audience, like a student audience, students famously don't have much money. So advertisers famously don't pay very much to get in front of them. But still, of course, there's a market for students, but it's not going to be a very high CPM model. And if it's like I don't know, if you really are passionate about Pokemon, great. Used to love Pokemon as a kid too, but who are Pokemon fans? Not kids or really affluent people. How many companies really are there selling Pokemon related products? How high CPMs do they have? Are they old traditional companies that probably just advertise on TV and billboards when Pokemon Go's newly released or there's an update or I don't know what it is? Is your industry used to actually spending in new media, social media, newsletters, podcasts, etc.? Because if they're not, then it's going to be you're gonna have to convince them conceptually that advertising in newsletters is a good thing, which is much harder than someone or some brand that already does it or is at least very aware of it. And you're just then talking about the fit and the campaign. So you're starting from square four as opposed to square one. I hope, did I answer your question? Was that
perfectly?
Useful?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's perfect. That was in terms of industries monetizing the best, and you shared as well best industries, but industries to be aware of. So that's really insightful. Now, if we talk about more the type of newsletters, and by type I mean perhaps the format of the newsletter, the frequency that you send the newsletter to, the target audience, what do you see monetizing better than other? Is that daily newsletter? Let's narrow it down perhaps to B2B. Do you think it's best to send a daily newsletter, a weekly newsletter? It depends. I guess that's your response. What's your view on that?
It massively depends on where you are in the business. If what your goal is, if you're if you're a primarily ad supported business, like your primary revenue stream is ads of some form, then more the better. Assuming that you can do it without imploding engagement rates, because as we had the spreadsheet earlier, if you send 4 times a month, then you literally have a fifth of the revenue potential than if you send 20. Really simple but also really important. If you're just starting out or small medium and getting to the point where you maybe doubling down or hiring on ad sales and you started out weekly, it's quite a well-ish trodden path to start weekly with something in the early days because of resources and time to write. Go 3 times a week, and then if you think your audience can digest it and there is genuinely enough to actually talk about, go daily. Like if there is enough to talk about, if your audience engagement doesn't implode when you go 2, 3, 4 times a week, and you're primarily ad-supported business, more the merrier. As long as you're not sacrificing engagement. It will drop a bit, most likely. But if it goes from 55 to 35, then you should probably reverse that change. If it goes from 55 to 51, it's like the maths works still. And you're in a better place than you were. And you don't have to do. It's not a binary once a week versus daily. You can be twice a week, 3 times a week, and you can change. I think if you're not necessarily news and update focused and you're more evergreen content of deep dives, it's going to be tricky to go daily. And I think there is a spectrum. And similarly, if your goals are primarily feeding, I run a B2B newsletter on ad sales, for fun, but also it does act as a funnel for my agency. That wouldn't make sense to go daily, because there's probably not enough to talk about in the current format, and B, it serves my goals weekly, and because it's not an ad-supported business. So yeah, it depends on a few different things. In terms of format, the actual newsletter, with like length, there's not a right answer. I do think that as a rule of thumb, don't go too long for all the obvious decreasing attention span related reasons. It's just really hard to keep people reading for more than a few hundred words this day and age. If you can convey the value, whether that's news or like teaching someone something new or entertaining, if you can do that in 2, 3, 4, 5, 600 words, that's probably a better bet than trying to do a 2,000 or 3,000 word essay every newsletter plus the actual time. But there's always exceptions to the rule, and there are some people that have really, really good journalists or just have a really loyal following or really good personal brand where it works for them.
Makes sense. Make a lot of sense. I was wondering, like, in terms of putting an advertiser in your newsletter, if your content is rather short, do you think advertiser will be like, oh yeah, but like I prefer to be associated with long-term content longer content, because I feel like there's probably, maybe it's conscious and unconscious, but an advertiser who thinks like, okay, I'm going to put like maybe 200 words about my business to promote it within a newsletter. If the newsletter is like only 500 words, it's almost like half the content is sponsored. You see what I mean? Probably there's something here, or is that not an issue at all?
I've never heard that come up. I mean, 200 words is a very short newsletter. I think most would probably be more like 500 to 1,000. Mine is, the main story is usually 750, and then I have a news section at the top, which is, I don't count that necessarily in the work. It usually ends out around 1,000 total, including all the bits and bobs that are kind of there already. But I would have a bias to be like that or a little shorter for most people. And 1,000 or 700, 600 words isn't nothing, especially in a quick hit format with plenty of imagery. It's still going to be a pretty decent scroll. And formatting is really, really important. So you don't just want it in blocks of text that just kind of fit in one screen. You'd want it, even if it is one long article, definitely include imagery, definitely make it digestible or scrollable or skimmable. Unfortunately, I'd love everyone to hang on to every last word of every newsletter, but that's not the case. The minority will read it really, really closely. Most people will skim it and enjoy it, as we all do with content. But no, it's not something that I've ever seen come up. Or naturally, if you do have a shorter newsletter like Alex Hormozi's, it's like one kind of short paragraph. I don't know. I don't think he runs ads in it because it's serving his other business. Again, goal dependent on what you're trying to do. That if they were to run ads in it, it would match the format of the newsletter. Maybe he'd break it into 2 very small paragraphs and have a hit. Maybe they'd have the shorter, punchier ad that is in the tone of voice of and format of that newsletter. Not seen it come up, but if that was a concern that it was too short, then maybe it is being too short for an ad-supported newsletter. But also make your ads match your newsletter. And most advertisers, will respect or even want you to kind of tell them, to guide them what's best.
All right.
They understand that should perform better.
I'm guessing longer newsletters as well, longer content is an opportunity for publishers or for newsletters to include different ad spots within the newsletter. Did you have any feedback from advertisers saying, no, I want exclusivity on this newsletter. I don't want my potential competitors to be on the same newsletter edition as mine?
Yeah, obviously, yeah. If you are primarily ad-supported business, then assuming you're sold out of the primaries will open you up to more ad slots. But again, I think that kind of length that will have you a primary, a secondary, and maybe a tertiary sponsor still is very, very doable with 700, 800, 900 words. It doesn't need to be in the thousands. But this is somewhat subjective. Your question was, do advertisers kind of not want to have their competitors in the same edition? Yeah, that's kind of a rule of thumb I've always operated under. Don't have direct competitors in the same newsletter. Campaign performance, keeping partners happy. And you can also look at kind of wider exclusive rights, but make sure the advertiser pays handsomely for it, especially if you're in a small niche with a limited amount of potential advertisers. I think that is definitely a desire of advertisers, and one that obviously there are often competing interests in negotiating sponsorship deals with publishers and advertisers. But that one I've always thought like that's fair enough. Let's not run direct competitors, but it will often be the case that maybe there are diagonally competing with someone in the same edition.
So then now is the part of the podcast where you share all your secrets for ad sales. What did you learn and what's your main best practice for newsletter trying to sell sponsorship for that newsletter?
The main, do I have to distill it to one thing, or can it be a couple of things?
A couple of things.
A couple of things. I think the main thing that is key to success, especially with outbound, inbound is easier to close, but across the board, inbound, outbound, this will help you close more and close bigger deals, is genuinely try and don't be a salesperson, especially when you're on a call. Get people on calls. Should be an assumption. Yes, you can try and sell over email, but calls are always better. So first of all, maybe it's get people on calls. You can close advertising deals, especially small, medium ones, especially if they're like fairly standard and don't have different moving parts over email, and that's great. But from a sales perspective, always be your goal to get someone on a call. First pitch, if they start negotiating and asking for a price reduction, it's like, okay, let's get on the call so I can understand your thought process. Because then you can understand your thought process, and you can, instead of like emailing and not knowing what they're thinking, get people on calls. That's the first thing. Second thing I would say is don't be a salesperson. Be a campaign planner on the call. Your job is, yes, it is to sell, but from the brand's perspective, your job is running their campaign. So you need to really genuinely seek to understand the brand's goals, their target audience, their focus, their current marketing mix, what channels they're using, the angle of the campaigns that perform best, and then take the two key ones, the most important are their goals and target audience. Listen to them, go a layer deeper. So they tell you their goal is acquisitions. Okay, what is an acquisition? Is it a funded account, an open account, a customer? What is a lead? Whatever their answers are, try and understand it so you can then use the tools that you have, the media channels you have, the audience, whatever campaign options you have to genuinely go, okay, your goal is this. Let's do this type of campaign. Let's do it this way. Let's talk about this aspect of your product. You said educational thought leadership was important. Let's actually do that. Maybe we could do some hosted content if education's really important to you. And just plan a campaign which best aligns with what they want. It's really simple, but not easy, especially on a call when the hardest thing is just remembering to do these things, managing your emotions realistically. And unfortunately, there's no easy way around that except for just experience. And some people start in a naturally better position than others. As with all things, seek to understand and then just pitch them what they want. Match up their audience with your audience, assuming that it is at least somewhat a good fit, then and part of that is at the end of the call, make sure you're closing. So get them on a call, be a campaign planner, really understand and pitch them what is actually going to help them, and then close on a call, i.e. make sure you ask their budget, and if they're a bit coy about what their marketing budget is, which some people are, especially Europeans, we're a little bit less open than Americans, then say, okay, no worries, but the kind of package I had in mind was, okay, 10K, is that digestible for you? And then you're kind of asking their budget without asking their budget, because if they say, yeah, it's fine, then it's fine. If they say no, then it's not. Budget, timeline, and this one is, I've forgotten a lot, decision-making process, especially important once you're speaking to even medium companies, but just not startups, bigger companies. So get their budget, get the timeline when they would like to run the campaign, then you know how to follow up appropriately, but also say, in between here and getting this campaign started or signing this off, what needs to happen on your end? And then that will tell you in a not too direct way whether they need to get approval from their boss or whether they're the decision maker, or whether you should then try and get that boss on another call. And you can really navigate it comes down to like proper sales methodology, or there's a million different frameworks, but do they have the authority to make the decision? Or if they don't, how can you navigate that? Because usually it will be they pitch the idea to their boss and their boss would say yes or no and allocate them the budget, and then they can sign it off. And if you don't know that, then you're guessing. You can sometimes make an assumption if they're a CMO or the founder, for example. But get on calls, be a campaign planner, and genuinely just try and help people and close well at the end of a call.
Okay, perfect. Very informative, very insightful, and I think that's we can feel that you have a lot of experience with that with call. My thinking now goes to, you said don't introduce yourself as a sales guy, but more as a campaign planner. Campaign planner means that you follow up as well with the performance of the campaign. And performance means what advertiser wants. And if you think about it, like, let's say you're selling an ad spot for HubSpot in your newsletter. Do advertisers want performance in terms of like, I want X amount of sign up and I'm going to incentivize you based on the performance? Or is that like a fixed fee deal? Is that a mix, hybrid? How does that work when you approach this type of company or any startup or any SaaS?
Yeah, and with the campaign planner part, it's more of a mindset to get in, as opposed to introducing yourself as a campaign planner and how you should come across to the brand as a campaign planner. I didn't mean to introduce, but it's same. But in terms of brands looking for performance, most are, yes. And that is the eternal dance that is made between the publisher and the brand. Like, the brand obviously would like to do things on a performance basis when they only pay you on some kind of action. That their favorite would be affiliate or referral. They pay you X number of dollars or % per conversion. Obviously, the model favorite to the publisher is a flat fee, and then favorable again, upfront payment. But a lot of brands will try, and the biggest kind of objection and sales hurdle you'll come across is most likely is brands trying to say, hey, this sounds great, can you do it on an affiliate basis? If you want to, that's fine. If it's your primary, affiliate can be a fine secondary or kind of tertiary ancillary revenue model, but it's so out of your control. Even if you do everything right, put a great campaign together, open rates fantastic, if their landing page is rubbish or the website crashes, they don't even track it properly, then you're not getting paid. So it's completely outside of your control. You're relying on a company's sales funnel, staff being competent, being honest, which is not usually a problem. People are generally honest, and there are third-party tracking systems, but still. And then maybe you're waiting for 3 months for the attribution, and then maybe you're waiting another month for the invoicing, the billings come around. You're not getting paid. You don't know how much you're getting paid, and you're not getting paid for it for 4 months. If you want to do some affiliates, make sure it's not your primary revenue stream, and you should always be aiming for flat fee sponsorships. And brands do pay flat fees. It is a harder sell, even if they're performance focused. What they'll generally do is crunch the numbers. Let's say your ad is okay. They will see X number of impressions. You tell them how many clicks they should expect. They'll probably take the lower level of that, plug it into their conversion rate for a similar campaign, and then say, okay, we'll probably get 42 customers from this. It costs us $5,000, so our CAC is there. And the best way to do that dance over a call or email, if they start bringing up referral commissions or affiliates, is don't say, like, the worst thing you can do to any sales objection is just say, no, we're right, you're wrong, this is how it is. Well, the better way is to just like, okay, you've asked about affiliate. What's the goal? What's the CAC that you're aiming for there? They'll have a number in mind of the amount they'd happy to pay for a customer, CPA, CAC, same. And then once you understood their CAC is the main thing, really, then you can kind of say, okay, most of our partners are performance. We're really performance driven. Like I said, all our repeat partners are usually looking at lead CPL, or usually have a CPL or a CPA in mind. What I can do is tell you exactly what kind of numbers you can expect, and you can plug it into your back end, and then we can kind of see if it should meet your goals or not. And most brands will have some flat fee budget, and then you can basically just walk through the numbers, do the open rate, click rate, and then ask them the conversion rate. You can do the maths on the call, even better. And it's okay, so at this price, you said you'd like to keep your CAC below $300 or euros, pounds. At our flat fee rate, being conservative, it should be 220. So I think this would be a good fit. Obviously, you can correct me if I'm wrong, and you can still then be meeting their goals. And it won't work every time. Some people, it won't work every time. That's just life. But it's not the end of the road if they start talking about affiliate. It's an obstacle to overcome.
That's perfect, and thank you so much for sharing this, because I've heard this objection a lot actually from newsletter, especially in France here, where all the advertisers now are looking for performance, and they don't want to hear about fixed fee, which for publisher, of course, is less than ideal. So I think the way you frame it and the way you show that potential value for advertiser, but still working on a fixed fee would be really helpful and insightful for media and publishers. What mistakes do you see publishers and newsletter doing the most when it comes to selling their inventory to advertisers?
What mistakes? It's probably a good question. The biggest mistake, probably just doing outbound wrong. Like a really common situation is had some success, more ad hoc, more inbound, opportunistic, maybe from the network, want to add outbound to make it more predictable and nominally increase revenue. There's a bunch of sub mistakes within just doing outbound wrong. The first worst one is just starting to just do outreach off their main business domain. If they're ctochronicles.com, they'll start doing outreach off of the ctochronicles.com email addresses, which is so risky unless you're doing like 5 outreaches a day, all manual, all custom. It's just so risky. You will inevitably get someone like report you to spam because it is a cold email. Especially in certain cultures, some people are more open or less open to cold email. Buy a new domain and warm up your mailboxes before you do it. Because if you get a couple of spam reports, which you inevitably will, even if you're doing everything right, catch someone on a bad day or spells, like it will happen. You'll jeopardize your actual domain authority. Plus, even if you aren't getting spam reports, Google will then realize, or Google or whoever will realize that you're cold emailing and maybe start to penalize you after a while, unless you're doing a certain few other things correctly. And even then, it's still probably going to happen anyway. So yeah, buy alternative domains, ctochroniclesmedia.com. Like, doesn't have to be rocket science. Warm them up for 15 days. There's a bunch of different solutions for that. Smart Lead, MailForge, Instantly, Lemlist, all have warming features. Apollo, I think, as well. And once that's done, I think the next biggest mistake within outbound is just writing too long emails. Attention span, because people get so many emails, attention spans are short. I try and keep all our cold emails under 150 words tops. Like, hi, name, why you? Like, why am I reaching out? What's the reason? What's the trigger? Saw you advertising in XYZ, saw you raised X, saw you launched this AI feature, whatever it is. Hi, why you? Why us? Why now? Question, call to action. It's like really simple. Intro line, 2 or 3 lines of text, call to action. Lines, not paragraphs. Ideally, I try and keep all the paragraphs to 1 line. It's skimmable. It's aesthetically pleasing. Maybe one of a bit, but definitely not more than 2 lines a paragraph, and 2 or 3 of those within each email. Don't have any links in the email, even a non-subscribe link. It will just harm your deliverability, even though you're supposed to do it, especially in Europe. Yeah. Short emails, no links, no attachments. Otherwise, you're just going to land in spam most of the time because it's becoming increasingly harder and harder to actually land in inboxes, especially with cold email, even with subscribers, as I'm sure people are very, very well aware of. Yeah, that's plus final one. I'd say follow up a lot. Sales is some sales will happen because they're really keen, but a lot will happen where they're on a fence and you're just following up and continuing to remind them of the fact that they were interested and now it's a good time, so let's do it. And so follow up lots.
Perfect. Any advices for publishers who are already doing decent revenue from their newsletters, but looking to really go extra and bring more revenues without doubling down on the acquisition side? And in terms of really sales for the added inventory, what would you recommend to an established newsletter?
Yeah, an established newsletter without investing lots in subscriber growth to increase revenue. You can either increase the amount of leads, inbound or outbound. So do more outbound. Let's get really Really, to keep it really simple, you can increase the amount of new business leads. Let's do a bit more inbound marketing, whether that's in your ad space. You can do a dedicated email to subscribers if your subscribers align with your type of advertiser, which in a lot of B2B actually will be the case. And if you have enriched first-party data with your previous guest, Mega Hit, for example, then you could actually maybe even do a targeted newsletter, just letting people know that they can advertise there. So yeah, increasing the amount of inbound leads, increasing the amount of outbound leads by doing more of it or doing it better. But what I would say is probably the best way to approach that situation is the easiest person to sell to is someone that's already given you money before. So look at your existing or previous partner list and do more sales or engage with them more. That could be over delivering on campaigns, which means your renewal rate will go up. Perceived and real value of the campaigns will be higher and they'll renew more and be happier and you'll be happier and everyone will be smiling. Or people that have previously run a campaign, if you're established, it's going to be a decent amount of those people. Keep them updated. Put together a B2B newsletter for all your previous sponsors where it's really simple. Hey, we recently hit this milestone. We recently ran this campaign. Keep them engaged. Keep you in the back of their mind. So when they're next doing their Q3 budget talks, that you come up in conversation. That can work really, really well. It can be done in a really streamlined way. So you're not emailing 400 people one at a time. And I'd apply that not to just previous actual sponsors, but previous good sales conversations. So use your existing sales, your existing clients, or sales conversations that have progressed to a pitch or a proposal and dropped off for whatever reason. Put them into a long-term engagement strategy where you're keeping them engaged. You're not necessarily trying to sell to them right now. The call to action will be like, really enjoyed chatting with you. Hopefully we'll pick up this up in the next quarter, or like, is it worth exploring this for whatever? A softest call to action, keeping them updated, especially if you have if you're a B2B newsletter, quite a few will do reports on the industry or for their certain job title. That's going to be really interesting to a marketer in your space. Try and be helpful to these people. That goes across the board, but especially when keeping previous sponsors or just previous leads, sales conversations keeping you in the back of their mind and trying to get them back into your pipeline.
Okay, very cool. I've seen this type of B2B newsletter for advertisers in B2C and B2B, and I think it's really cool. And even sometimes it's done only once per month, so it's not too much effort. Because again, coming back at what you were saying, if you not have anything to say, there's no point sending a daily newsletter about that. And it's we open new ad slots, and we have this opportunity in terms of content calendar. There's a lot of cool stuff I think that you can plug into this type of newsletter. So that's a huge thing I would advise for publisher to create. Relatively simple, if I can say. Now, before closing the podcast, when we prepared this episode, we talked about trends. So it's slightly off topic of ad sales, but you mentioned that you see huge opportunities in podcasts, YouTube channels, and I quote, some of them are sitting on gold mine, but do not realize it. So can you tell us a bit more about this and why you're excited about this?
Yeah, slightly off the newsletter topic, but very, very still in the media or content creator universe. I think there are YouTube especially, podcasts as well. I think newsletter people are, for whatever reason, more plugged in or aware of their audience and trying to monetize it. I think because YouTube, there are existing YouTube pay you for your content, so it's not always brand deals are not always top of mind, and maybe the same could be said for others as well. But there are just so many weird and wonderful YouTube channels and podcasts out there. Use that as well to a lesser degree or less, or it's less of a in YouTube and podcasts. It's less utilized. I think so many people are sitting on so many weird and wonderful YouTube channels and podcasts that have millions of subscribers or millions of downloads, and they're barely doing any kind of conscious sponsorship sales. They're converting inbound, they're working their LinkedIn network, they're reaching out to their mate that worked at that company. And that's always a great place to start. But as soon as you have spare revenue, that not you're not spend all your margin on doubling down on ad sales, but at some point, if you have surplus margin, you may as well invest that into making more revenue. And I think so many people are kind of getting good money from YouTube, coasting on a few inbounds, a couple of opportunistic ad hoc deals. Maybe they have an agency where they made a couple of introductions, but they haven't doubled down on really having an outbound motion, on putting real effort into making the campaigns really work, having an ad ops person, hiring a full-time salesperson, and whether it's from a business perspective or founder's perspectives of growing the business or getting the founder out of the day-to-day of everything. Because a lot of founders are like in the trenches for every discipline still. Yeah, I just think there's so many weird and wonderful B2B and B2C podcasts, social media pages as well, that like they just think brand deals happen occasionally. But no, like you can make a full-time, long-term, sustainable business out of just brand deals. I say brand deals because it's generally how YouTubers or influencers will say sponsorships or ad sales. Same thing. But
we could just argue for YouTube, to be fair, like the channel with millions of subscribers or millions of views. To your point, I think the manager or the creator of these channels are happy as well with the way YouTube are sharing the economics and sharing the revenue with their monetization program, which is one of the only platform that share revenue with the creator. But to your point, it's nothing compared to what they can make when they have special ops or special ad sales, or even create their own products. If we take the example of Mr. Beast and selling chocolate or stuff like that. So there are huge opportunities. And I was wondering, because right now your agency Ad Sales as a Service is mainly focused on mainly working with newsletters. But do you think going forward you would like to as well help this type of the creator economy to get into ad sales? Is that something you're planning to do?
Yeah, and we already have clients that are kind of touching all of those different channels.
Mm-hmm.
And the principles are exactly the same. There are some nuances, especially from platform to platform, of what metrics you need to know and focus on for a newsletter versus social versus YouTube versus podcast. But yeah, absolutely. I think my client base is my co-founder Jack's background has been in newsletters. Like over 50% are newsletter first businesses at least. But we have creator economy clients, mm-hmm. YouTube clients, podcast clients. I'm just that they seem to be, as a rule of thumb, just like less plugged in to the potential and much more under-monetized on the whole. Some aren't, of course, whether that's products or ad sales or courses, but I think ad sales specifically, because people view it, brand deals, as like, yeah, they're great when they come in, but when they come in, and they don't realize that they do have control over that. Yeah.
Very insightful. So before we get closing for real this time, what are the trends that you're most excited about in your industry right now?
Trends that I'm most excited about, that is a good question. I think post-COVID, there were, maybe not post-COVID, like 2023, there was a huge slump in marketing budget, experimental marketing budgets, or that direct ad sales market was just tough. And it is a tough market sometimes. When there is a recession, it's usually the first thing that goes in a company, a marketing budget. 2024 and 2025 so far have been really strong, both like from my view personally and the statistics. So yeah, the outlook is bright for direct ad sales. There is always a burgeoning fear that more and more of the ad market will just become programmatic and not directly sold. But I think that is not true. As more and more ads are flooded into everyone's lives every day, better ads will do better, trying to put this in like child's language, and directly sold and negotiated and manually built ads are just better than something beamed in that's got the same thing across 1,000 channels. It's not personalized. If it's a podcast, it's not in the host's voice. If it's a newsletter, it's not in the host's tone of voice, whatever the channel is. I think the future for direct ad sales, supported by like the media, new media revolution and creator economy, etc., however you want to position it, is bright. And I think the ad sales market is a lagging indicator of the creator economy, which is growing really, really fast. So yeah, optimistic.
Perfect. That's what I like to hear, because as you can guess on this podcast, sometimes I tend to be a bit pessimistic about the media industry and the way it goes, the way forward. But I love as well to explore the future of media and what it means in terms of like seeing the bright side of things. So I really like your message.
It's tough. Of course, every business is tough, and there are struggles that are unique to it. But I think on the whole, looking at most, if not all, of the numbers and reports, there's reason to be optimistic.
Okay, very cool. You mentioned that you have a newsletter. Do you want to share the address and what do you talk about in this newsletter?
Yeah, it's a super small newsletter on ad sales, sponsorships, newsletter or media monetization. It's www.revenues.co. Revenues is spelled REVENEWS.co. I'm sure there'll be a link somewhere.
Yes, I'll put in the description.
And other link, I think just my LinkedIn, which is probably useful. AdSalesAsAservice.com as well. But if people want to, always happy to chat, whether it's about becoming a client or just to shoot the shit about newsletter or new media, always happy to do that.
Cool, perfect. I think you already participated or you've already been a guest on other podcasts as well, so we can include this link too to give more insights about what do you do and why it's important for publishers to get in touch with you and perhaps using your services. And so I'll put all the links. Dan, thank you so much. That was really insightful, and this topic I think is very important. And I was really excited to talk to you about direct ad sales, because I can clearly see, at least in France, with the publishers I'm talking to, that there's a huge friction in terms of picking up the phone and talk to advertisers, sending outreach email. I don't know why. It's maybe because the guys are really good at creating the content, and then when it comes to monetizing the content, perhaps it's cultural. I don't know. In the US, it's maybe different. Actually, that's a good question. Do you think in the US they have like less friction to sell the advertising than in Europe?
I think the short answer to that is absolutely. I think the US have a much more. I think they have lower inhibitions in general than Europeans. I can't speak for France, but I think we sometimes feel cringy or too capitalist or like rude trying to sell. It's not the case in America. Like they're always celebrating, like, yeah, you go get it. But I don't think we should feel that way. To a degree, there's balance to be had, of course.
Perfect. Okay, very cool. That's the end of the podcast, Dan, for real. Thank you so much.
That was fun. Cheers.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Cheers.
Bye.